The ever-changing world of a group of friends is reflected in Channel 4's The Four Seasons, starting in a few minutes. Tonight, the work of a girlfriend profoundly affects the macho image of her partner.
When time's your enemy, you need a friend. Independent Express. We don't just promise a nationwide overnight delivery service. We deliver the goods. Independent Express. The name carries weight.
Is Britain keeping up with other countries? In Indonesia, for instance, a company is battling against all the odds to find oil, and they're doing the same in 29 other countries. In Africa and parts of the developing world, they have fridges powered totally by the sun, so vaccines can now be stored under the right conditions. In Sweden, they're using a new home-insulating foam, so incredibly fire-resistant it could save lives. And in some Middle East countries, they're queuing up to buy a high-quality lubricating oil produced in Europe. So, is Britain falling behind?
You must be joking, mate. With all this going on.
Do us a favour. What do you think this is? Scott's mist?
Not at all. Who do you think's responsible for this little beauty?
Don't be daft. We're doing marvellous, man.
Well, I was only asking.
If you don't know what's living by a river, how do you know what you're missing? Now, with the Country Companion, you'll see things you can easily miss. This week, discover why so many young kingfishers drown. Beautiful illustrations show you plant and animal life. Each week, the Country Companion looks at a different natural habitat and shows you how to discover its secrets. The Country Companion, a complete exploration of the British countryside.
The snooker season's back, and we open with a new tournament, the Goya Matchroom Trophy at Trentham Gardens, with a purse of £35,000 for the winner. Tonight we feature the world's two top-ranking players, Cliff Thorburn, already in championship form and looking pretty good in the early stages against John Campbell today. And we catch our first glimpse of Steve Davis, determined to prove that last season's setbacks are nothing more than a minor hiccup. Will he get over the disappointment of that World Championship defeat 5 months ago? Join us later this evening.
This is Yorkshire Television. Now we join Alistair Bennett and Pamela Armstrong for the news at 10.
President Reagan meets Moscow's new man and says he's happy. This PLO terrorist in Cyprus is a British volunteer. Liverpool will sack 31,000. The unions are angry. Gloria decides not to call on New York today. And Sandy Lyles out of touch and out of the match play. Good evening. President Reagan met the new Soviet Foreign Minister, Mr. Eduard Shevardnadze, in Washington today and said afterwards he was happy about what he'd heard. It appears to have confirmed reports of proposals for a 40% cut in nuclear weapons. Mr. Shevardnadze took a letter to Mr. Reagan setting out the new Soviet ideas for the arms talks in Geneva. The American Secretary of State, Mr. George Shultz, said the Soviet plan was different. It moved it forward, he said. It could lead to genuine negotiation.
A rain-swept Russian embassy found the Soviets in an upstairs room making final preparations for today's meeting, a mere quarter-mile down Washington's 16th Street at the White House. The side effects of Hurricane Gloria providing Mr. Shevardnadze with a soaking arrival, presenting a gloomy start to a meeting viewed here with much anticipation. Rare leaks from Soviet officials had suggested that he was carrying new proposals. But in the Oval Office, in the brief moments we were permitted to listen, he chose to keep well away from arms control, selecting instead the safer social ground of the weather.
Well, you, Mr. President, meet Mikhail Gorbachev. I hope that the weather there is going to be fine, really fine.
What we later learnt was that when the two men moved to the cabinet room next door, Shevardnadze did produce a new and lengthy letter from Mr. Gorbachev with proposals in Russian. The two men finally emerged into the sunlight amid a sense that not only the weather had improved, no questions, no answers. Instead, the international media summoned later to a session with George Shultz, describing the morning's meeting and something about lunch.
The President held a lengthy meeting, 2 hours or so, with Foreign Minister Shevardnadze today, and then had him for lunch in the White House.
In a serious vein, Mr. Shultz, who has survived a somewhat frostbitten period of dealings with the Russians, admitted the Gorbachev letter constituted a change of Soviet position.
It's different from what they have been saying.
As the Soviets have called 2 days of full plenary sessions in Geneva next week, Mr. Shultz says that this is where the complex offers of arms reduction will be discussed in detail. So to another of the Russian news conferences that are the hallmark of the Shevardnadze caravan. Would the Russians tell us what was in the Gorbachev letter?
Any singling out of any one topic would be artificial.
The public exchange of positions suddenly silenced. What is new is an apparent Soviet acceptance for the first time of some limited form of Star Wars research. What is equally clear is that the White House appears determined to put the lid on the propaganda war between East and West by shifting the details to the arms talks in Geneva. Jon Snow, News at 10, Washington.
The United States Central Intelligence Agency has confirmed tonight that another high-ranking Soviet KGB man has defected to the West. Mr. Vitaly Yushchenko, who's 50, is being interrogated by CIA officials and it's thought he might have vital information about more Soviet spies working in America. One report says he's named former CIA members.
In Moscow, Mr. Gorbachev has made one of his close political friends Prime Minister. He's Mr. Nikolai Ryzhkov, 55, a former factory manager in Siberia, who's been looking after the economy since he came into the Politburo in April. He replaces Mr. Nikolai Tikhonov, who's 80, and who owed his appointment to the elderly Mr. Brezhnev back in 1980. Mr. Tikhonov said his health wouldn't let him continue.
One of the gunmen who murdered 3 Israelis in Cyprus on Wednesday is now thought to be a Briton, the Foreign Office are checking. The killers, who surrendered to Cypriot police, were from the Palestine Liberation Organization. One, a fair-haired man, said he was a Palestinian called George Hanna. It seems he's actually Ian Davison from South Shields, who joined the PLO in 1983.
Christmas 1983, a last defiant